Alright guys, so today we're doing an in-dash video on this 2014 370Z convertible. So just going to go over some of the basics. This one is non-base with Bose, no navigation. So there's a couple of additional things as far as that goes, so we'll go over those here now. Okay, so there's a few parts you're going to need, and I'm going to list the parts in the description. And there's a couple ways to do this with Bose, and this customer went with, in my opinion, the better way, although it's not the simplest way. Of course, they're doing an Alpine, not what I would recommend, but it gets the job done, has CarPlay, Android Auto. You're going to need your basic wire harness. This is a Metra 7552, I believe. Now, with the Bose, you have to integrate into that. So you can do that with a separate integration piece. This is basically a 4-channel line output converter that can be wired in. I'll go over that in a little bit. This is the best way because your levels are going to be able to be adjusted to be correct and not overpowering. They make a 7553, which basically has RCA ends on the speaker wires here, and that'll work. Usually though, the outputs on the radio are going to be a little loud. You may even get some amp pop. So basically you turn the volume to like 2 and then it's blasting. So there's not really any adjustment in between. So this allows you to basically adjust the gain on the output, convert it to low level, for the amp. And it works out pretty well. Of course, you'll need an antenna adapter. Antenna plug is different. It's a powered antenna adapter. And then, since this is not a base model with the regular double DIN radio, you'll need a dash kit to make everything fit with the mounts. And of course, this is for single or double, so we'll be cutting that piece. And I'll go over that in a little bit. And so now that we've got all the parts unpacked, the radio, what I like to do is take the vehicle apart first. So let's go over that. Okay, so this one's an automatic, so a little bit extra to do. So we'll basically have to pull this shift knob off so that we can pull this piece off to get started, because there's screws for these side bolsters, and then screws for everything else is going to have to come off. So this is the first piece. So real simple. You just pull this down. There's actually a metal clip here that we're going to pop forward. It'll allow this whole thing to slip up. Now it's really easy to lose. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll be back after I've removed that. All right, so as you can see, it is off, and this is a better view of the clip. Obviously it sits this way, so in the front you can just get a pick tool, pull it off. These actually have little lips on them, so you can kind of push them out while keeping your hand on the other side. Either way, and then the whole thing slides up. Now that that's done, we just need to pull this up. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can use a panel tool, pop straight up. This will just slide out. Now, depending on the model, you may have the buttons here. Either way, there's plugs. So you're going to reach and just grab these the push in right here, unplug it, set that aside. So now we got to get these side bolsters off. They are held by 2 screws right here and then back here on each side. So I'm going to do that, pop them off, and then we can move forward. Okay, so now that those are off, and by the way, once you remove those 2 screws, you literally just pull to the side each way. They're held in by little clips, as you can see, on each corner there, and they just slide, pop right out. What you're left with now are these 2 screws to hold on the bottom of this whole piece. Now, this is going to have a USB connection for CarPlay. Usually I'm going to run it through here and actually have to grab parking brake right here. Luckily there's easy access. There are ways to bypass. I will not tell you how to legally bypass your videos, but there are other YouTube videos to do it very simply. But for the case of this video, I'm going to do it the correct way. But I would already be running here, and I would put it in here, but they actually requested to put the USB out here in this cubby, so I'll be drilling a hole and doing that later. But mainly right now we have to take this off. Now there's a couple of things. Once we pop it off, you'll need to disconnect. There's a plug back here and a plug back here. I will show those when I'm finished pulling this piece off. Very important, once you unplug this passenger airbag, you do not want to cycle the key on. Otherwise you will be getting an airbag light on your dash that will have to be reset with a code reader, or there's a procedure, but it's just that much easier to make sure that you don't cycle this key on at all while this airbag light is unplugged. So I'm going to take this off and then we'll move forward. Just a quick to show you what happens next. Now some vehicles you'll actually need like a panel tool, and sometimes there's hidden screws and whatever. These are really easy. Once you unscrew this, you can literally just pull on this and the whole thing pops off with clips from up top. So you can just get you a nice good grip. You may, depending on your skills, need a panel tool to get that top piece off, but otherwise once those clips are removed, it pops right off. And then like I said, you don't want to pull it too far. You'll have to reach around and grab those two plugs, which I'm going to show here in just a second. Okay, so now that we've got that off, and you see here's the push button plug and that's the airbag plug. All we have now is to take out the radio. Now with this being one piece, unlike the other model, we'll be needing to disconnect. Of course we'll disconnect all the plugs, but this is going to be taken out and then put on the new dash kit. So this comes out a little bit different. The other one would have just a faceplate and then the screws for the radio separate, but this all comes out in one, even though they're still separate. So there's 4 screws for the plastic face piece, and then there's 4 screws for the whole frame of everything. So you got to take those, all 8 of those out, and then this whole thing will slide out, and then we'll unplug the radio plugs and the AC control plugs and take the whole unit out, and we'll take it to the bench, and then we'll get started on the dash kit first before we do the wiring. Okay, so now that we've got the unit out, got the dash kit, I've already cut this middle piece and filed it down smooth, because we're not doing a single din, I'm doing a double din. So basically what we need to do is we're going to need to unbolt this. This is the AC piece and then the AC controls. I'm going to unbolt those. There's some pieces that we'll use to basically mount them on the dash kit, so that they will be there, and then we can actually mount the radio itself, and then go from there. I'll come back when all of that is finished. It's pretty straightforward, just screws, screw it in. Very straightforward. Okay, so now we have the factory AC control knobs mounted onto the kit. Let's get the radio mounted. All right, so there's a couple of different ways to get the end result. I have a way that I like to do it, just because it allows me to get it to fit better and there's less guesswork. So it comes with a trim ring and then mounting pieces. I usually go ahead and put the trim ring, and then the mounting pieces are very obvious. There's a guide slot here, and then they're labeled R for right, L for left, excuse me. So I just slide those in so that they're actually mounted. Then what I can do is I can take this and I can slide it up in there and hold it to where I want the depth to be, and then go ahead and screw it in. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so I've got them mounted up. Everything's nice and even and flush. Looks good. They just screw in on the side with the little screws that are provided. So now that we are done mounting it, we'll get to work on the wiring. Okay, so we've got all our wiring out and kind of set up, ready to go. Now, a couple things. Obviously, we have a Bluetooth mic. We'll be running that separate. We'll do that a little bit later. USB, like I said, I'm drilling a hole in that pocket. That's going to be real simple. It's just dropping the hole, dropping it down. The radio is right there. So we'll handle those later. But basically, we have the radio harness, of course, our amp interface, the vehicle side. Now this Alpine, a couple of things why I don't recommend Alpine. They have this separate harness here. We're not using this right now. I'm going to give it to the customer because she may add a backup camera later, and this is the accessory harness that does sub outputs, camera inputs, all that stuff. But to clean up the install right now, we're just going to leave that in the box because she's not doing any of that. And she also opted out of steering wheel controls, which is why that's not in this video. Eventually I'll have a video going over that because it's pretty common. The other thing with the Alpine harnesses is, one, they have a lot of extra length. So I usually cut them flush to clean everything up. But also, in your normal install, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to do, for the most part, color to color. You know, your accessory turn on is going to be red, constant's going to be yellow, ground black, and then your speaker wires are all going to be the same. They do something weird, especially with the parking brake and reverse wire. Usually reverse input, which we're not using here, is usually purple with white. They just, for some reason, aren't on board with everything that everybody else is doing as far as the universal color codes. So I usually have to take a glance at the manual if I haven't done one in a while. Because yes, right now I can't remember what parking brake is and what reverse is. There's a yellow with blue, I believe, is parking brake, because that's green, which is what it normally is. It's a light green universal. And I think for some reason orange and white, which normally would be illumination in most cars, is something else. I think it's the reverse input, but I'll double check that. But in this case, we're not wiring directly wire to wire. We're using this. I'm going to wire this up first, and then I'll kind of explain what's going on with it when I'm finished with everything. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so basic wiring's done. So of course, all this is going to get cleaned up. I usually will clean this up with some test tape or something, but this is to kind of give you an idea, along with a diagram. So basically, it explains you've got the plug-in. That's going to go to your aftermarket radio. It's going to be grabbing the high-level wires. And then this is your wire harness to the vehicle. So all you're basically doing is, here's that same plug. This is going into, or from, technically, the radio plug. So this is what plugs in the Alpine. Color to color to the plug-in. Of course, the power and all that stuff's together. And then on this end, the RCAs are going to plug into here. Same thing, color to color to the vehicle. So it actually comes all in one piece. You cut it in half. You use the one end, just following this diagram. You got your all four speakers, or 4-speaker signal anyway. Like I said, coming from the radio, it goes into this. This gets adjusted, outputs through these RCAs to low level, into the vehicle to the Bose amp, and of course your power is just directly. I'm going to tape this up. Now, one thing that I usually do to tune these, the other reason that I was talking about this, why it's a little bit better, is because it's adjustable. I turn the gains all the way down. Then what I do is I turn the radio, once it's all installed, to about 3/4 volume. And then I turn this up to right about where you start to hear distortion, and then back it off a little bit. That's going to give you pretty much a good, nice variable range of adjustment, but also where it's not going to end up blowing the speakers, but you've got plenty of volume. So I'm going to wrap this up, get it all together, show you that, and then we'll go into how I'm going to do the parking brake, and then running the USB and Bluetooth mic. For the parking brake, I just use like male and female connectors. I'm actually going to run a wire from the parking brake. I know what wire it is, but I'll show you guys that and how to test it. And then I just run it up. That way I can just, take this whole thing once it's all taped up together and looking nice, and then just plug it in right behind the radio. Makes it very simple. All right, nice and cleaned up, able to just be nice and tucked away. Got our radio side, vehicle side, and of course our antenna, and then the piece for the parking brake. Let's hop in the car and take a look at all that. Okay, so parking brake, actually on this car is really easy. I already knew the color, but I went ahead and tested it just to be double sure. Now when you're testing this, you're looking for continuity to ground when you pull the e-brake up. A lot of meters will have where it'll whistle or ding or beep or something when you have it in a continuity setting. So it's really easy. You just connect one lead to ground, one lead to this wire. When you pull it up, it should beep. You put it down, it should stop. There's a couple different ways to test it, but that's usually the easiest with most meters. But it is this real obvious orange one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap into that, solder it in, fish my green wire up that I've got right here with the connector on the end up there. I've already drilled the hole for the USB in the piece up on the bench. Like I said, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a hole and then it drops down behind here. You'll be able to plug it into the thing. The Bluetooth mic is right here. With convertibles, it's a little difficult. There's not a lot of places in here. Usually I like to try to put it in the middle somewhere, but there's not really any options. So it should be fine up here in the corner. Now, these Alpine mics are a bunch of junk. They're mounts. This is a giant clip. It's really ugly, and not a lot of adjustability in as far as the aim, but whatever is going to do the job. Take my panel tool, run it just like in the backup camera video, with this wires up through here and then up underneath, and then we'll fish them up through here and then make sure that they're zip tied up and out of the way. And then everything should be back here. We'll plug everything in. That's probably when we'll come back to take a look at that, and then actually get to mounting the radio, and then we should be done. All right, so we got everything plugged up, plugged in the factory plug. This tucked away nice and clean, out of the way, with our parking brake, antenna wire, and our Bluetooth mic run and USB, all able to be grabbed, and then everything buttoned in. And so we'll put the radio in, we'll test everything out, put everything back together, and see how everything goes. All right, so we're done. Everything's good. We have the USB right here, plenty of length. That's where she wanted it. Everything's good. AC controls are of course working. Made sure they're plugged back in, and we're all together. Obviously everything is putting it back together reverse from taking it apart, so same screws. Put the radio in, and then this piece comes on. Just make sure that you plug in the two plugs, put in the side pieces, pop this piece in, make sure you plug in the hazard switch, and you're good to go. And that's the radio install on a 370Z.